Hi and good evening. Welcome to our live crafting video this evening. My name's Jenny McCormack and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator and I'm based in the market town of Brackley in the UK, and I'm being joined by one of the kittens. For any of you that don't know, we have kittens in the house, and I've got a very demanding little ginger kitten here who's a little bit large to be on screen but it's purring away. Maybe he's got seed pods in his fur. Maybe he'll just sit down in a minute. We'll see. So good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining me this evening. So it's not quite as planned because I intended to use the Abigail Rose papers, only to discover that I don't have any Abigail Rose papers, but I do have the perfectly penciled papers, which are black and white. The Abigail Rose is black and a vanilla. But these are very similar and they will do the job. So we're going to do some watercolouring. So this week is actually the last week of watercolour month in July. Can't believe I've not really caught up with it at all yet. So I do apologise. There have been plenty of demonstrators that have been doing watercolour samples right the way through. Hi Kate. But I thought it was about time I did that. So the funniest thing is the kitten is looking at my phone, watching my hands move on my phone. That's quite amusing. Anyway, he may or may not settle down. We'll see. Do have a shadow cast. So we are using our watercolour pencils, and we have 2 packs of pencils. They're called Watercolour Pencils Assortment 1 and 2. These are ages old in the original packaging, when we first had watercolour pencils, and then we brought out a second set, Watercolour Assortment 2. So these are numbered 1 to 13, including white, and these are numbered 14 to 23. And there's a mix of colours. There's no duplicated colours, so you could start with one or the other, whichever one you like the colour combinations of. So these are in our annual catalogue. And in our basic assortment, the number 1, we've got Real Red, Calypso Coral, Pumpkin Pie, Daffodil Delight Old Olive, Bermuda Bay, Pacific Point, Rich Raspberry, Melon Mambo, Espresso, Basic Grey, Basic Black and White. So all of those colours are still current. And there's 13 of those. And then here we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We've got Cherry Cobbler, Flirty Flamingo, Cajun Craze, Crushed Curry, which has since retired. No, it hasn't retired at all. Just ignore that. Crushed Curry, Granny Apple Green, Garden Green, Coastal Cabana, Balmy Blue, Night of Navy and Gorgeous Grape. So none of those are retired colours. They're all from our basic ranges. So what we're going to be doing is using some of our, in this case, perfectly penciled papers. I've just cut 3 sample pieces, so it's a white background, and then we've got some, in this case, if I show you one at a time, flowers. There's also a little butterfly here and here, and some sort of inbuilt shading. So it's really pretty. And it works really well in black and white as well. I've then selected this piece here with the flowers, and then this one here, and they're almost like almost like sweet peas. I know the leaves are wrong really for sweet peas, but it's almost a sweet pea shape. I've got a backing layer of basic black card and a white base card. So the base card measures 10.5 by 14.85. The black layer is 10 centimeters by 14.35, and then I've cut these three pieces to 9.5 by 13.85, so basically half a centimetre between each one. Bless you, Kate. Yes, they should match the inks. You should have known. I know you said that you got some watercolour pencils. So the nice thing about watercolour pencils is they last for ages. Even my original ones, you can see the ones that I use the most, because obviously they're shorter, where I've sharpened them and used them. And needless to say, mine don't actually go back in its original container, so I'm sure at one point I will reallocate them. It is nice to have a white pencil, because if you're working on dark card, you can use that to put underneath images to lighten it. But today we're just going to go for the watercolour effect. And Patty Bennett, a lovely demonstrator friend in America, you can find her under Patty Stamps, Patty, has done some great watercolour tutorials using the watercolour pencils, and it was her tutorial actually that I was watching that gave me the idea for today. So let's just give this a quick go. So I've got three pieces. I'm not going to fill all of them in, but I think this might be our design for coffee and card for this and next week, because I've got quite a lot of pencils, and I'm going to be using a water brush that's got water in it, but I'm using kitchen towel as well, because I don't want to make this piece of paper too wet. You could also use a blender pen to blend out some of the colours. So I'm just going to start with this one here, and I might put the black layer behind so that you can see it a little bit better. And let's get cracking. So I'm just going to do some stalks to start with, and let me grab a piece of white card. So you can obviously just use these as colouring pencils. They will work perfectly as colouring pencils in their own right. I find I don't like a really sharp tip, so if I do have to sharpen the pencil themselves, then I do try and rub this off onto a piece of card. And you'll see if I use my water brush, you can just blend that and get a real nice watercolour effect. This is just on a scrap of basic white. Hopefully you can see that. If I just scribble a piece next to it, you'll see the difference. Okay, so the one on the right is without water, and the one on the left is with a little bit of water. Now you can use a paintbrush, you can use a blender pen, okay, and the colour will pick up on the nib. So once you've done your blending, you can of course use that to carry on colouring. Okay, let's do a little bit of the stalks to start things. Yes, the alcohol pens are really good for not buckling the paper, definitely. So all I'm going to do, and I might need to sharpen this, having said I don't sharpen them very much. Let's see if I can find my sharpener. I normally keep it in with the pencils, and of course when I want one I can't find it. Let me just see if there's one to hand here. No. So I've got about 4 pencil sharpeners, none of which I can see. Never mind. Okay, so I'm just going to use the smallest amount, but I'm putting some green on the bottom of these stalks. Now these can actually be various colours, but I'm just going to add them to the leaves like so. And you can mix and match your colours. Because you're just laying down a little bit of colour here, you can add different shades of green, for example. So I'm just going to do those leaves like that. And then I'm going to bring in my water brush and just move a little bit of this colour. Okay, and if it gets too wet, just make sure you dab it off, or you can use your kitchen roll and dab it off directly. So this is quite a small area of green, so I appreciate you're not going to see it in a great detail. You'll see more detail when I do one of the larger flowers. But it is a fairly quick way of colouring, probably quicker than just using alcohol markers, because the laying down of the colour is really quick. Let's find that one there. Okay. Now the other thing you can do is, having scribbled some colour onto here, you can actually use that colour to pick up and paint with. So where I've got these really fine stalks, I can use a bit of that colour there on my stalks. So the water painters that you can buy now, this is an old one, come in a pack of 3 with a fine, a medium and a broad nib. So the broad one is really for doing a good watercolour wash in it for a background. The fine one is perfect for this technique, and then the medium one you can sort of use for a little bit of everything. Okay, so hopefully you can see that little bit of green going in there. So you want to make sure that you clean this off of any colour. And let's use, got Melon Mambo here. So what I'm going to do is put Melon Mambo at the bottom of these flowers, like so. And I think if you treated these as sweet peas, they come in reds, they come in blues, like so. And yellows. So we do have the colour printed on the barrel itself. Okay, so I've just laid down a little bit of colour for each of those. Hopefully you can see that okay. And then I'm going to use my water painter to move that around, but I'm going to do for example, all of the yellows first and then change colour. Okay, now if you want a little bit more colour in one place, you can pick up the colour using your water brush here. So if you want it a little bit darker, and I'm not squeezing the barrel of this brush. I don't want to saturate this because it is only paper. Obviously there's lots of techniques that involve a lot of water and watercolour card. So just do that area there, and then if I wanted a deeper, this is Calypso Coral, if I wanted this on the tips, for example, or in the centres. Oh, I see what you mean. Colour holds alcohol instead of water. Oh, I see. Yes, that's true. Never thought of that. You mean the colour lifter? I have to try it. I wouldn't have thought of that. Okay, so just blending that in like so. So hopefully you can see that. Let me put my glasses on so I can see what you can see. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to give that a go. So this is the colour lifter that Kate's talking about. So this is alcohol based, so it's picking up the colour, but because the alcohol as it is laid down is evaporating, it's moving some of the colour but drying very, very quickly. So it definitely does work. I feel that it's not moving the ink as much, but it may be that I just haven't laid down as much ink, to be honest. So this is Pacific Point. That's okay, Kate. It also may depend on how much ink or alcohol rather I've got in there. Okay, let's get rid of a bit of that yellow, and then so you can see the difference there using that with the water. Just drawing that colour out. Okay, and I just want to dry that off a little bit because I don't want it absolutely soaking. It's not coming through to the back, but I don't want it to bubble up the paper. So hopefully you can see that. Yeah, it is a different effect. And the blender pen as well does similar to that. Okay, let's switch up to a little bit of this pink. So again, just moving that around. So if you're not a fan of a lot of blending, then this could be something to try if you don't like alcohol markers. So just moving that around, literally, so it's very quick. Okay, so can you see how that's coming together with those colours? So that's one option that I can do on that card, so I'll finish that one off later. What I want to show you is the 3 different pieces, and then I will finish them and make it into a card. So this one here, I've cut to the same size, 9.5 by 14.35, and this has got 2 butterflies, so this is going to dictate which way round this goes. But I could easily, not really, I could easily turn it on its side, but I think that really needs to go that way. So let's do the butterflies. So I've got some gorgeous grape here. So lay that to the centres. This one here. So the paper that I'm putting it onto is not a coated paper, it's our standard designer paper. Like so. And then I'm just going to pick up a bit more colour. And it is useful to have a piece to hand. Like so. And then let's have a little bit of pink on the edges. Again, so I'm just picking up from the very top of the watercolour pencil and applying it on there. Take some colour off and then just move it around slightly. Now if you have watercolour paper, obviously you're going to be able to move this around a lot more. Okay. Yes, it would need to be Staz-On ink, or you could use any of the coloured inks as long as you heat set it with some clear embossing powder. So if you had the Stamparatus and a big image, you could stamp it once in the colour and then stamp over it in Versamark ink, put clear embossing powder on, and then you could colour over it to its heart content, or Staz-On would definitely do the job. Right, so this is Granny Apple Green. So I'm going to apply that to these ones here, these leaves. So there is some colouring and shading already done for you. These are all buds here. Let's do this one. That's okay. So I'm just laying down this colour. Now the nice thing about watercolour when you're using pencils is you can lay this colour down, come back to it tomorrow and still move some of that ink around, some of the watercolour. Okay. These are petals. So what I'm doing is I'm picking out all of the green that I want to colour. Obviously you can use multiple greens anyway. I think that might be a leaf or a flower. And then I'm going to just use my pen to move that. So you can see I'm doing it fairly speedily. Obviously you can take a lot more time than I am. talking about time, we had a great in-person class this afternoon for our July sun prints class. I'll pop up some photos on my Facebook page, and they'll appear in my blog as well, which I finally got back up and running after a very long break. And then if I want to add a little bit more a different green, I can add some in at the tips, for example. So you know me, my style of colouring is, shall I say relaxed? I don't get too precious about it. There we go. So I'm literally just scribbling the colour and doing it like that. Now you can do the same thing with inks, obviously, as watercolour pencils. The nice thing about watercolour pencils is you're not adding any water of significance to your paper, whereas if you were using inks or ink refill, you're adding a substantial amount of water, and it can make your paper buckle. So I've got a kitten asleep on my foot. You don't have to shut up in the slightest, Kate. Let's have some, let me see, what colour? I think it's going to be yellows in here, maybe with an orangey centre. This is Calypso Coral. So just going to do a circle of that, like so, for these flowers, maybe a little bit in this middle bit here. So as always, quite therapeutic. You could sit with a whole sheet of this. So this paper comes as 12 by 12 sheets, so you could sit with a whole sheet. I prefer to break it up into smaller pieces, but you don't have to do that. Okay, just blending that out a little bit. So and then I'm going to add our Daffodil Delight. So you can see the difference of the colour laying down where you've got more of a tip on your pencil, whereas this one here hasn't got much. But you can use any watercolour pencils. Obviously the Stampin' Up watercolour pencils are designed to match the rest in terms of the card or the ribbon or the inks. But if you've got watercolour pencils at home already, grab those and give them a go. And if you haven't got a paintbrush to hand, you can buy our water brushes or our blender pen. Water brushes come in a pack of 3, as do our blender pens, but the blender pens are double-sided. You've got 2 ends and they're the same either side. They don't have different nibs. Okay, so I hope everybody's had a good day. As I say, we had great fun at our card class this afternoon. So that was our in-person class, and then we have our online class at the weekend on Saturday afternoon, so I'm looking forward to that. So the kits for those should be going out tomorrow, along with the July to December catalogues if you haven't already got one. I was a bit late getting them out. It felt just too early to send them out in June. So if you've been waiting, I do apologise. Right, so these are a bit like sort of Rose of Sharon, Hypericum, but I'm sure they could be many other plants as well. Okay. And again, if you want more detailed colour, just pick it straight up from the pencil. Just don't squeeze too much on the barrel because you don't want it too wet, or use an almost dry paintbrush. Just have a little bit of water that you dip it into and then dry it off in between. So of course you could fussy cut a panel like this, but I'm just going to keep mine as the whole panel. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this one quickly. And I can make this one Calypso Coral as well. I've only got this piece of black underneath so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. It's not necessary in terms of the colouring. There we go. So I wonder if you're watching live and you're in the UK, whether you're going to be watching the ladies' football this evening or women's football. It's the semi-finals that we've got to, and I had to say I'm not a football fan in the slightest, but I did catch the women's match the other day, and yeah, I really enjoyed watching it. So while I'm finishing prepping class packs this evening, I'll be watching and supporting. Brenda won't be watching it. I don't, as I say, I don't watch football as a general rule, but it'd be nice to support the women. Okay, so that's coming together really nicely. Pleased about that. Just gonna dry that off and just quickly add a little bit down here on these flowers. Now there is shading already in here, so you could leave some of these uncoloured if you wanted to, or just a minimal amount of colour as I've done here. This is Calypso Coral. And this one. So I've had a couple more orders through for our paper shares for July to December. So my first lot of shares is complete and will be going out probably tomorrow or shortly after. But if you want to be included in the next batch, then let me know. So if you've already ordered from me and paid for those, yours are in the first batch going out. And I'm just going to do a little bit of yellow here. So I said I wasn't going to finish these. but I'm so nearly there with this one. Now you can take a lot more time. I think those are leaves than I am, obviously. There we go. Oh, there's one in there. So you can see how quickly this would be coloured in comparison probably to Blend's pens. Well, I just think they did so well, and it's just much more professional, I thought. I won't say it's more professional than what. I think you know. There we go. There we are. So there's my little bit. So it's half an hour since I started, but I've shown you the technique, and I've done all of that piece and half of this piece, so you can see how quickly they can come together. And then this one would be really easy to colour in exactly the same way. So if there's a right or a wrong way, they go both ways, don't they? Nothing in it. Let me just choose maybe some blues, something different for this one. So I've got Bermuda Bay and Coastal Cabana. Just to show you that. So what I might do is the front of this petal in one colour and the back in a different one. So you can do an element of shading if you've got dark and light colours. So this is Coastal Cabana, the lighter of the two. I'm not going to do the whole thing. What I will do is put this one together and then finish the others off and photograph them. So just making sure that I get rid of any excess colour. Now these leaves are already coloured in black, so this is a nice quick one to colour because you've only really got the flowers. Like so. And you can see where it's picked up the ink. So once you've got some ink on there, as long as you're careful, you can carry on colouring, or, as I say, pick it up from here, like so.